My fairy tale wedding was only a week old. Just 7 days. The scent of dried roses still hung in the air, a sweet reminder of what I thought was the best day of my life. Our apartment was a happy mess of wedding gifts, with boxes of new crystal and bedding piled everywhere, all these symbols of a future I believed in. But there was one gift I hadn't really noticed before, a small, plain-looking digital clock on our bookshelf. I just assumed it was another thing I'd missed in all the happy chaos. It was from my new husband, Liam. He'd put it there a couple of days ago, saying he wanted something modern on the shelf, something just from him. I went to dust it, just a normal little chore in my new, perfect life. My finger brushed against the plastic, and then, something else. A tiny circle, almost invisible, no bigger than a pinhead, set into the black surface. It was a lens. My heart didn't just stop. It felt like it was ripped out of my chest and dropped into ice water. The air in the room got thick, and I couldn't breathe. It was a hidden camera. My first thought was just, no. It couldn't be. This was Liam. My Liam. The man who cried when I walked down the aisle. The man who held my hand while we slept. There had to be an explanation. It had to be a mistake. But a cold, heavy dread was already coiling in my stomach, a feeling so certain it felt like gravity. I knew, with a certainty that terrified me, that I had to see what was on it. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely unplug it. I fumbled with the tiny memory card, and when I finally slid it into my laptop, I saw the man I had just promised my life to. His face was cold, unrecognizable, as he confessed to a friend that our entire marriage, every smile, every touch, every single word, was a lie. And to understand how deep the deception ran, you first have to understand the picture-perfect fairy tale he created just for me. You can't understand how badly my world shattered without knowing how perfect it all seemed. Our love story felt like it was straight out of a movie. I was a junior graphic designer, working late, dreading a deadline. He was a consultant for a firm in our building, a new face I hadn't seen. He held the elevator for me, and when I stumbled in and dropped everything, he didn't just help. He knelt down, organizing my presentation boards, smiling this incredibly gentle smile the whole time. His name was Liam. He had these warm, whiskey-colored eyes and a voice that just made you feel safe. He asked me to dinner that night. I said yes immediately. That first date lasted 5 hours. We talked about everything. He told me he'd grown up moving around with his family, never really feeling like he belonged anywhere. It made his dream of putting down roots feel so real. He listened to me with this intensity that was just intoxicating. He remembered the name of my childhood dog, the fact that I hate cilantro, all these tiny details. He made me feel seen for the first time in my life. The whole courtship was a whirlwind. He was the kind of romantic you only read about in books. He'd leave my favorite flower on my car. He planned these elaborate dates, surprise picnics, tickets to my favorite band, a weekend away in a cozy cabin. He was so attentive, so thoughtful, so in love with me. Or so I thought. My friends loved him. My parents, who are usually skeptical of everyone I date, were totally won over. He's the one, Ava, my mom told me. He looks at you like you're the only person in the world. Looking back, there were tiny flags. Not red flags, not even yellow. They were more like beige. Little things that seemed like nothing at the time. He was always vague about his family, saying they were complicated and he'd rather focus on our future. It sounded romantic then, like I was his future. Now, I see it was just evasion. Another thing was how urgent he was about the practical side of our life. The moment we got engaged, after a breathtaking proposal on a sailboat at sunset, he was almost obsessed with the paperwork. While I was dreaming about wedding dresses, he was focused on the legal stuff. He was the one who pushed to get our marriage license application in months early. The very morning after our wedding, he insisted we go get the official certificate. "I just can't wait for you to officially be my wife," he'd said, and kissed me. I thought his obsession with the paperwork was just romantic passion. The truth was, he was just excited to be tied to my citizenship. The wedding itself was perfect. A small ceremony at a historic inn with our closest family and friends. I remember seeing his face as I walked down the aisle, just this mask of pure adoration, with tears in his eyes. I remember how his hand felt in mine, the sincerity in his voice as he said his vows. Every moment of that day is burned into my memory, but now it's all tainted, like a beautiful photo with burned edges. That first week of our marriage was a dream. We were in our own little bubble. Coffee in bed every morning, little notes in my work bag, dancing in the kitchen while we cooked dinner. He'd hold me at night and whisper about the kids we'd have and the life we'd build. It was the performance of a lifetime. And I was the starstruck audience of one. I had never been happier. I had never felt safer. I was living a lie, and I was the only one who didn't know it. The clock was ticking, both on the bookshelf and on my fake happiness. And the alarm was about to go off. I had no idea that when I finally checked that camera's memory card, I'd hear a voice I didn't recognize coming out of my husband's mouth, confessing the cold, hard truth about his plan. The laptop screen just glowed. It had no idea it was about to destroy my entire world. I clicked on the first video file. The camera angle was from the bookshelf, looking out into our living room. It was dated 2 days ago. And there was Liam. My husband. But it wasn't my Liam. The man on the screen was a stranger wearing my husband's face. The warmth in his eyes was gone, replaced by a cold, flat emptiness. He was on the phone, his voice low and sharp. "It's done," he said, with zero emotion. Yeah, the ceremony was what it was. A lot of crying. Americans love that stuff. He let out this short, harsh laugh I'd never heard before. It made the hair on my arms stand up. I could hear a muffled voice on the other end. Liam nodded. "Ava? Oh, she's completely bought it. Hook, line, and sinker. She thinks I'm the second coming. Honestly, it's almost too easy." I felt the air leave my lungs in a silent scream. My hand flew to my mouth. This couldn't be real. It had to be a joke. A nightmare I'd wake up from. But I was already in hell. The voice on the phone must have asked something else. Liam leaned forward. "The visa is the only thing that matters," he whispered. "We filed the certificate the day after the wedding. My lawyer says the initial petition is strong. With a spouse, a citizen, it's the fastest way. Another year, maybe 18 months, and the conditions are removed. Then I'm free. And I'm gone. Free. And gone." The words echoed in the giant hole that had just opened up in my chest. He wasn't building a life with me, he was escaping from me. I wasn't his partner, I was his passport. I was just a tool. The whole foundation of my life crumbled into dust. Nausea hit me so hard I had to grip my desk to keep from falling over. The room felt like it was tilting. Every memory was being rewritten. His tears at the altar weren't tears of joy, they were tears of triumph. His rush to file the marriage certificate wasn't romance, it was a calculated step. All his talk about our future, it was just part of the script. I clicked on another file. This one was from the night before. Liam was with a friend from the wedding, drinking our whiskey on our sofa. "You've got to give it to her, though," the friend said. "She's a nice girl." "A bit naive, maybe." Liam just shrugged. "Nice doesn't pay the bills. Naive is useful. That's the point." The more they believe in the fairy tale, the less they question the details. He took a long drink. "I just have to keep the act up a little while longer. Play the devoted husband. It's exhausting, but it's worth it." The word act felt like a punch to the gut. The exhaustion he was talking about wasn't from work, it was from pretending to love me. I wasn't his safe harbor. I was his job. I slammed the laptop shut. The sound echoed in the crushing silence. I just sat there, frozen. The world outside seemed like it was from another planet. My reality was now this room and the monster I had married. The man I loved didn't exist. He was a character played by a ruthless stranger. And that stranger would be home in a few hours, expecting his loving wife to greet him with a smile. The horror was quickly turning into a new kind of terror. I had to face him. And I had to pretend I knew nothing. That's when I stopped being a victim and started being a hunter. He thought I was a ghost in my own home, but I was secretly gathering every piece of evidence I needed to destroy him. The sound of his key in the lock was like a gunshot. I went completely rigid. I was on the sofa, a book open on my lap, the words just a blur. I'd spent the last few hours basically numb, putting the memory card back in the clock and erasing my laptop's history. I was running on pure survival instinct. "Hey, honey. I'm home." His voice, so full of fake warmth, felt like poison. I looked up and forced my face into a smile. "Hey. How was your day?" He came over and kissed me, the long, lingering kiss he always gave me. It used to make my heart race. Now, it just felt like a violation. I had to fight the urge to pull away, to scrub his touch off my skin. "Long day," he sighed, loosening his tie. "But it's all worth it to come home to you." He smiled that perfect, practiced smile. It didn't reach his eyes. I saw it now. How had I never seen it before? That night was the beginning of my own personal horror movie. I became a ghost in my own home, living with an enemy who saw me as a stepping stone to a green card. Every "I love you" was a lie. Every touch was a transaction. I became paranoid, always aware of the camera's little eye watching me. Was he watching the footage? Did he know that I knew? I started performing, too, being extra cheerful and loving, kissing him for no reason while my stomach churned. It was a terrifying game where we were both acting, but only I knew it was all fake. Sleep? I barely remember what that was. I'd lie awake for hours, just staring at him. Who was this stranger I married? I replayed everything in my head, looking for the clues I'd missed. His dislike of taking photos. The fact that I'd never met any of his real, long-term friends. The vague stories about his past. They weren't beige flags anymore, they were giant crimson banners, and I had been completely blind. A cold, quiet rage started to replace my heartbreak, and I began gathering my own evidence. When he was in the shower, I'd frantically search his things, my heart pounding. In an old jacket, I found a second phone, a cheap, prepaid burner phone. The password was a date. Not our anniversary. A quick search revealed it was a national holiday in his home country. The phone confirmed everything. There were texts in his native language that I painstakingly translated with an app. They talked about the project. They didn't use my name. They called me the target or the ticket. The ticket is asking about my family again. Had to spin another story. It's getting tiring. There was also a conversation with a woman. The tone was intimate. They talked about a future together, about him finally coming home to her. He had a girlfriend. Or maybe a wife. Someone waiting for him. I wasn't just a pawn in his immigration scheme, I was the other woman in my own marriage. The humiliation was a constant, physical ache. I took pictures of every single screen, my hands shaking. I found emails between him and an immigration lawyer outlining the timeline for his permanent residency. He had forwarded our marriage certificate with a note, Phase 1 complete. Living that double life was the hardest thing I've ever done. I had to be Ava, the loving wife, while inside I was a detective and a victim. When he'd notice a flicker of something in my eyes and ask what was wrong, I'd blame work. He'd wrap his arms around me and tell me everything would be okay. He was the source of all my pain, pretending to be my comfort. It was a twisted game, but I was learning the rules. And I was getting ready to make my move. He had mistaken my love for weakness. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. With a mountain of evidence and a cold, quiet rage, I made a single phone call that would set a trap he could never escape. My rage wasn't hot and explosive. It was cold. A glacier of fury moving through me. I wasn't going to scream at him. That's what he'd expect from the target, the emotional woman he thought I was. No. I was done playing his game. I was going to write my own ending. My first call wasn't to my friends. It was to an immigration lawyer who specialized in fraud cases. I told Liam I had a migraine and went to her office. I laid it all out, my voice steady. I showed her the pictures from the burner phone, the translated texts where I was the ticket, and the video files from the camera. Her face got more and more grim as she looked through everything. Finally, she looked at me with something that looked like respect. "Mr. Liam's last name has been very, very stupid," she said. "This is one of the most comprehensive cases of marriage fraud I have ever seen. You have done all the work." She explained that I could report him to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. She gave me their tip line number and told me how to get the marriage annulled for fraud. "You were a victim," she said, and those words felt like a balm on a wound I didn't even know was still so raw. I walked out of her office feeling like I could breathe for the first time in weeks. I had a plan. The power was back in my hands. That night, I was almost calm. I made dinner. Liam was in a great mood, talking about a promotion, painting a picture of a future he had no intention of sharing with me. I just smiled and nodded, playing my part one last time. After he went to sleep, I closed myself in my office, took a deep breath, and made the call. I spoke to an agent, my voice low but clear. I identified myself and reported a case of marriage fraud. I gave them his name, his date of birth, and all the details. I told them I had undeniable proof. The agent took the information and gave me a case number. The next 2 days were the longest of my life. I was living on a knife's edge. Then, on a Thursday evening, it happened. We were watching a movie when there was a knock on the door. It wasn't a friendly knock. It was loud, firm, and official. Liam looked at me, confused. "Are you expecting someone?" I shook my head, my heart starting to hammer. "No." He got up and looked through the peephole. I saw his whole body stiffen. He stumbled back, his face white. He turned and looked at me, his eyes wide with a dawning, panicked horror. In that single moment, he knew. He didn't know how, but he knew the game was up. He opened the door. 2 men and a woman stood there in dark blue jackets with IC in yellow letters on the back. "Are you Liam, last name?" one of them asked. "Yes?" His voice was a whisper. "We have some questions for you about your immigration status. May we come in?" Liam's eyes shot back to me, pleading. But he just saw the cold calm on my face, and his expression crumbled. The mask of the loving husband dissolved, replaced by the terrified face of a con man who'd just been caught. He didn't say another word. He just opened the door and stepped aside. The trap had snapped shut. But watching the man I married get arrested was only the beginning. The real challenge was figuring out how to put my life back together after discovering it was all a lie. The agents were professional as they explained they had credible information that his marriage was fraudulent. Liam just stood there, silent, his face gray. The charm was gone, stripped away to reveal the pathetic man he really was. When they asked to take the digital clock from the bookshelf as evidence, I just nodded. I watched them put my wedding gift, his tool of deception, into an evidence bag. Then, they led him away. He didn't look at me once. The silence he left behind was the loudest sound I'd ever heard. It was the sound of a lie ending. And the sound of my life beginning again. The annulment was granted quickly, the evidence was undeniable. I learned he would be deported with a permanent ban from ever re-entering the country. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction, but mostly, I just felt empty. Mourning a ghost is a strange, lonely process. The betrayal left deep scars on my ability to trust myself and others. But slowly, healing began. I reclaimed my apartment, packing away every last trace of him. I reconnected with my friends and family and let them support me. And one day, I woke up and the crushing weight on my chest was gone. I learned that his lies were about his character, not my worth. This experience shattered my innocence, but it also made me stronger than I ever thought I could be. I learned to listen to my intuition. I learned that some people are masters of lies. But I also learned that the truth always finds a way to the surface. And I am strong enough to stand in that light, even after walking through the darkest shadow. I survived, and in doing so, I found myself again. Thank you for listening to my story. It's not an easy one to tell, but I believe sharing our experiences is powerful. If you've ever been through a betrayal that shook your world, or if this resonated with you, please share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to hear more stories about resilience, please like this video and subscribe. You are not alone, and there is always a way forward.